How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Stupid Questions podcast. Today in the pod, we're going to be talking with Ari Klau. He's a musician, professional triathlete, and YouTuber. Make sure to check out his stuff in the show notes below. He has a really unique story. You may have seen him in some of Lionel Sanders' videos going back in the 2021 era, and he has kind of grown since then, has quite the following, and is just a super neat guy to talk to. Super passionate about what he does, and it's a great honor to have him on. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Ari Klau. Now you'll get to sweat to death now that your AC's off.
Hopefully it won't be too bad.
So I'm up in the attic. My buddy has, I use his house as a studio, and we used to turn the AC off, and it's in like Tennessee, and it's in the attic. And dude, one time I wore jeans up here, and I got done, and my jeans were like soaked.
Yeah, well, I live, or I guess used to live, at my parents' house in the attic also. And
oh yeah.
If the AC has not been on during the day, it's brutal up there. What state are you in?
Tennessee. I'm about 25 minutes outside of Chattanooga. Yeah, it's like 99% humidity.
I was going to say it's probably one of the few. The Southwest is probably one of the few places worse than the Northeast right now, or Southeast, I should say. Not Southwest.
Yeah, crazy.
Southeast also pretty bad. Southwest, I mean, pretty bad everywhere actually.
Yeah, it's been crazy hot. Like, usually it doesn't get this hot, and it's been this hot now for like a month, and it usually doesn't get like mid to high 90s with 80-90% humidity until like August, and it's like that for a few weeks. But it's been like June 15, June 10, just like sweltering crazy.
Better get adapted if you want to race well.
That's right. Yeah, I'm going up to Ohio in a couple weeks to race, so it should be a little less intense, hopefully.
That'll be better, or
I
hotter,
hope so.
less humid, maybe?
Less humid, definitely. And it's early in the morning, so hopefully in like 70s, 80s will be the max. Right. Yeah.
So I remember they had the shorten, I don't know if it was shorten the swim or shorten the run a couple of years ago, something at that race.
Yeah.
Or maybe it wasn't Ohio. Maybe it was Des Moines. I'm pretty sure Jason West won that race.
Yeah, Ohio didn't have a pro field anymore, or I don't think it has for a long time, ever since I've done it, like past 2 years. So maybe in Des Moines, but yeah.
Oh, nice, feeling fit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I realized, like, for me personally, like, I've probably been racing too much this year. I kind of threw a bunch of stuff in, and then you can't get really good training blocks in 2 weeks between two races, and it's just been kind of like, okay, well, whatever. Like, the bike's better than it's been ever been. Swim's decent, but the run is just like, so. Yeah,
that is by far the toughest in the heat. Like, you think I've had so many times where I think I'm so out of shape and running like shit, and then there's one cool morning and you get up for a long run and like feel amazing and run fast, and you're like, okay, it's fine.
Yeah. Speaking of up north, cooler weather, what are you doing in Connecticut? I guess that's not really up north, but
I grew up here, so I'm in the house, my parents' house. I was born and raised. They moved here just before I was born, and then I lived here all the way through high school, and then went out college in Virginia, went out to Boulder, ended up in Seattle eventually, but got to come home to visit. So here I am. I'm here for a good spell. One, because I don't have a lease right now. That will not be the case in, what is it, the 9th today?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in 6 days, my lease back in Seattle at the new house will start.
Nice.
On the 15th, but my last lease ended June 30th, so I had a 2-week stretch without a lease, so I was staying with my girlfriend Iris for a couple of days, and then decided to just come here a little early because 70.3 Main, which is my next race, is about a 4-hour drive from here.
Oh, not bad.
So I was like, screw it, knock out 2 birds with 1 stone. I can spend time with the family and kind of just get there early, get on the time zone, get used to the heat and humidity.
Yeah.
And not really have much travel for the race. Like, it's almost like a home race at this point.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how are you feeling?
Until the travel was feeling pretty amazing. Like, for the first time in a very long time, maybe ever in my triathlon career, actually, just wasn't forcing anything. Nice. And was hitting good power, good run times, pretty solid swim times, although not quite as good as I was sort of on the tail end of Australia and right when I got back.
Yeah,
but everything was good, really good actually. And again, not forcing it. So I would always get in this cycle in the past when I was self-coached mainly, but even in the early days with my coach, I would train super, super hard for 2 or 3 weeks, maybe 4, but usually didn't even make it to 4 weeks. And then I would totally hit a wall, dig myself a hole, need to take some rest, and then I'd be rested, and then I'd try it again. So it was always like a little bit way too hard, and then rest, and then way too hard again, and then rest. And I ended up being pretty stagnant, just because, you know, I was forcing things, hitting sort of volume in training or numbers in training that I thought a person of the caliber I want to be would be hitting this volume and power and paces. So that's what I'm going to try to do. And just doesn't quite work like that. So yeah, for the first time ever, I was just, you know, hitting it on all cylinders. I think at the correct effort, a sustainable effort, you know, adaptable, absorbable, all these words that everyone uses. Yeah. It was just good. And then travel, you know, a little bit of jet lag. 3 hours is not a huge time change, but it's enough that, you know, if you want to get up at 6 in the morning, it's going to feel like 3, and it is really hard to train at 3 in the morning. Yeah. I think for like an Ironman, you know, when you're getting up at around that time, you're, you know, smashing Red Bull. Yeah. And like, I don't really want to do that for a normal training day. So the first couple of days were rough, and then the humidity is pretty insane. Like, I think this is a really bad week. I've kind of forgotten what it was
record
like.
Setting.
Yeah, but it's, you know, it's every day is like 90 something. Actual temp feels like 99, 100 with the humidity. And yeah, so I just get that coupled with a couple hours of jet lag, kind of stopped my momentum a little bit. So now I'm trying to just build back up to a point where I'm, you know, feel like I'm rolling again, and I have a couple weeks to do so. Yeah,
good for you, man. And thanks for the synopsis. So, with the shift, I guess, and the way that you're training, rather than just kind of push, reset, try to do it again, push, was the change something that your coach kind of instigated? And what was that change?
Yeah, well, I actually posted this quote on Instagram. I said it was from a wise man, but it was from my coach. Yes. And the quote, I guess to paraphrase it, because I don't have the actual message that he sent, but it was, you train where you want to be, so you stay where you're at. And the secret is, if you just trained where you're at for like 12 months, you'd get to where you want to be. And what he was saying, and I thought it was actually pretty clear cut, because he sent me that, and I was like, oh my God, like, that is just so crystal clear. Yeah. I understand it. Sometimes it's when it's said in a certain way and it just hits you. But some people commented on the Instagram I posted, and were like, I had to read that 3 times and I still don't get it. But it means kind of exactly what I was saying before, is I was striving to train at a level of a person that I was not. I was trying to train at the level of a person much better than I was. And so I didn't get anywhere, because you train too hard and you don't actually absorb the training. You have to take way too long of rest periods. So you don't end up like, maybe you superficially gain a little bit of fitness, but then you have to take this huge rest period to actually recover from it. And then kind of by the time you get started again, you're almost right back where you started a month before. So I stayed in that cycle. And then when he finally had me basically throw my ego away, you know, he's like, run 8-minute miles on your easy days. Like, I don't care. Ride 160 watts on your easy days. I really don't care. You just need to be recovering between these sessions. And even your sessions, you don't have to kill yourself to get the benefit. Like, you think you have to go to this insane level of effort to get the benefit from it. So yeah, once he sent that, well, it wasn't a quote, it was just a message that he sent. I was like, okay, I have to just not have an ego about my training and train where I am on that day. And most of the time, for months, I'd say for 2 or 3 months, I was training at a level that I thought was below me. Honestly, you know, I was pushing 300 watts for these threshold reps on the trainer, and I look and I say, 300 watts. Like, what am I? And again, you know, 300 watts is pretty good. If you hold 300 watts in a 70.3, that's pretty good. But for for threshold reps, and again, this is where the ego comes back. I'm like, oh my God, I'm pushing 300 watts. I suck. These guys, I look on Strava and these guys are pushing 350, 360, 380. Yeah. Like, I'm pushing 305 here. Like, I'm not getting anywhere with this. And that's the mind. That's the mind trying to trick you in a way. The ego. Yeah. And so once I just threw that away, the last 3 months have been a pretty steady upward trajectory.
That's beautiful, man. So lots of good lessons there. I'm curious with your previous training, because you're the same coach. So before, was he giving you like a range of wattage to hit and you were just shooting above, or was it like perceived effort? And then how did you adjust now? Is it, okay, I think I should do this, so I'm going lower, or?
No, he would give me a pretty wide range, and sometimes he wouldn't give me a range at all. He would just say threshold. And so he'd give me whatever, like, let's say 4 by 10 minutes, even though that's not the kind of session he'll usually have me do, but do 4 by 10 minutes with, say, 5 minutes rest. And I'm like, okay, well, that's 2 to 1 work to rest. That's like a lot of rest, 5 minutes. So yeah, I should be hitting at least 350 for that. And I can do 4 by 10 minutes at 350. I can do it. It's not even like a maximal effort, but it's hard enough that I probably can't come back 2 days later and do another good session, or I probably can't come back the next day and do a pretty good run session. Like, it's gonna make me tired. So I think maybe the way I did it before I had a coach was I would space out these sessions way too much, which again, it's, if you're not doing enough intensity or enough volume, it's hard to gain fitness. And yeah, even when he was giving me all these sessions, I wasn't looking at a 3 or 4 week block in the way that he was looking at it, where it's like, okay, I don't actually care what the power is. We're just going to hit the intensity pretty consistently. And I was like, well, okay, today is 4 by 10. And for my ego to feel good about it, I need to push 350 watts. And I wasn't looking at 2 days later when, there's another pretty hard session. And if I do this at 350 watts today, it's going to be really hard to do 350 watts 2 days later, and probably impossible to do 350 watts 4 days later or 5 days later, whenever the next session after that is. So I kept doing that, and he kept coming back and being like, well, on the day, he'd be like, okay, good session. And then 2 days later, when I have a shit session, he's like, well, maybe you shouldn't have done 350 watts 2 days ago. And it took him some time to learn about my personality and my tendencies. And eventually he just said, you have to stop your random overtraining. Like, I do not care what the power is. You need to have just like a B to B plus, maybe B minus session all the time. Like, and now it's to the point where recently there have been workouts where he'll say, okay, push 310 to 350 for these reps. And I'll just push 300. Cause I'm like, sorry, that's what I had on the day, Yeah. And he's like, good, great. Like,
yeah, listen to the body.
Yeah, I'm trying to give you a range that I think is the correct stimulus, but only you know what is correct on the day. So it just took him some time to learn about me, and me some time to learn about where I really am and what he wants me to get out of the workouts, and sort of how his training philosophy works, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just took some time. I think, like any coach athlete relationship, it's gonna take a couple months, honestly, at least, to really get into a rhythm with each other.
Yeah. So this is a relatively new coach.
Yeah, it hasn't even been a year. So
okay, nice.
Yeah.
It's interesting you kind of sharing all that stuff, because it's something I've just recently started to learn, because I changed coaches, and nothing against my first coach. I mean, he had a style and stuff that was really good for me at the time. My first ever coach, but then the second one was a lot more lenient on, like you're saying, ranges and stuff like that. And I realized, like, oh man, I used to be basically pushing threshold just all the time, because I was like, and then that threshold becomes lower because you get so tired. So it's been interesting to kind of, on some certain days when you don't have it, know when to say, you know what, maybe today's not the day, pull back and gain it for the next.
Yeah, one of the bigger things that I have adopted is, this is a very common thing that everyone has gone through, is when you start a session and you're like, wow, I just do not have it today. And you're like, well, should I scrap it entirely? Should I modify it? And this is very, very few triathletes, even pro triathletes, have a coach on deck in person who can make that decision for them. So it's a tough it's a tough thing to make that decision yourself. And that's ultimately one of the reasons you have a coach is to have someone else to make that call who can see it a little bit more objectively than you. But you get on the trainer, you start running or you're swimming, and you're just not even close. Like, it's not even on the low end of the range. It's, oh man, I feel so bad. What do I do? And I've recently just been like, okay, like maybe this is so far below anything I would have thought was acceptable before, but I'm just going to go crazy slow. Like same. I ran 6-minute pace for 20 minutes, like in a workout. It was one of the very first like hot days in Seattle, and it was a brick, and I had a really, really poor bike session, some hill reps where normally for hill reps, they were like short VO2 max hill reps, would usually have no problem pushing over 400 watts, especially on the road bike uphill. Mm-hmm. And I was pushing like 350, 360, just absolutely cooking. And then I get back to my car, put the bike away, get my running shoes on. I'm like, I don't think I can do this session. Like, and the session, there were no ranges. It was just 20-minute threshold followed by some shorter reps. And I was like, I just can't do it. And I was like, well, it's 20-minute threshold. So it's like whatever my threshold is right now is what I'm going to do. And I ran 6-minute miles, which I mean, like I used to do when I was just running, track running. I used to just do most of my quote unquote easy runs at 6-minute miles. And so that one was really, an ego buster. I had but I was also happy with myself being like, okay, well, I just did it. And now like no modifications need to be made for the rest of the week because like I stayed on program. So I can just do tomorrow and the next day as originally planned. And like maybe it was like a D or a C- session, but like it's done. And I still got some benefit from it. And so, when I have those thoughts of, not thoughts, when you have those sessions where you just like, I don't have it today, just, do what you do have, because you have something, and like you might be super tired, but just lower the power to something that you thought below like your acceptable range and just do it. It's fine. Like your body's tired and maybe it needs some rest, but you can kind of rest or give it the rest it needs as you do it, right? Just lower your power, lower your pace, and let your body adapt, at whatever the current correct output is. That's worked for me anyway. And I haven't required any super long rest period in a pretty long time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that really hit home for me. The first episode I ever recorded, Trevor Foley came on and I was talking to him, and he was the first person I had ever heard of any level of authority. It was like, if I go out and I'm start doing a training session, especially on the bike, if I don't feel like it's good power, then I'll just ride easy for the duration of the time, and then I'll try it again the next day, and Coach and I will kind of push everything forward a day. And that really like shook me, because I was, like you're saying, like for me, it was a big ego thing, and it's always I'm wanting to push mentally. Like you feel like, if I can push this, and come race day, it'll feel easy, and that's just not the case. Some races feel really good, some races don't, but you got to accept what the body has in the day and kind of go with it. And I think for me, as I've learned to accept that, like the first time I ever did an Ironman, I was so scared that I was going to get out there and it's just going to be horrible. And I got out, done with the swim. I got into the bike from Chattanooga, and I started going out, and I looked down at my power numbers, and the power was coming easily, and I just started crying.
Tears of joy.
Yeah, tears of joy. I was like, this is such a good day. But then I've had other days where it's just like, meh. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the other side. That's the other option is, what Trevor's doing is, maybe just don't do it. But that's, as he sort of mentioned, it's between him and his coach, and his coach probably said, hey, if you are not feeling it, let's just don't do it. Let's try again the next day. You're obviously not ready for it on the day. And so that's kind of another thing that's important, is to just have that rapport with your coach that you can be confident that you're making the right decision while you're kind of on your own, especially with a remote coach. So that's another totally acceptable way to do it. For me, I prefer to do the session to the best of my ability, even if my ability is pretty crap that day, and move on. And we call it just stay on program. It's like my coach writes the program, and I try as hard as I can to stay on program.
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff, man. Well, we're already almost 20 minutes in, I guess. Officially got to say thank you so much for coming on. It's an honor and pleasure. It's been a long time coming. I'm glad that you're able to finally make it happen. But officially, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, we were trying to do this in January.
Yeah.
Right. And then there was like a whole bunch of things, not least of which was going to Australia, which, made the time change a little bit difficult. So, a whole bunch of things to push it off. But here we are, July. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure, man. And there's so many directions I want to go. I have a ton of questions that I've kind of written down over time. But the first area I'd love to start is, so I know you from obviously YouTube, Instagram. You can follow, there's the persona there. You have like this triathlon track running background, or was it cross country or track?
Both.
Okay, so like running background, and then you obviously are passionate about music. So like those are the two spheres that I really know you, if I was to describe who Ari is. But I would love to hear from your perspective. Who is Ari?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Yeah, I used to think when I thought about myself in college, I thought I had three spheres because I was so into computer science and math. Okay. I used to think about that stuff all the time. Because I was in college, I was studying computer science, and I was running, and I was making music, and I was like, those are the three things I spent most of my time on. And yeah, now it has just boiled down to two. I don't software engineer anymore. Well, actually, it was computer science, right? Because that's the sort of academia side of it. Mm-hmm. And then I did a year of software engineering in industry, which totally ruined the fun for me. Yeah. When you go from like the beauty of the theory of what's going on in computation, and then start working a job where it's all about, making the client happy. Mm. Yeah, that wasn't as fun. So those are two big things, I would say. Right now, triathlon has taken a much bigger mental and emotional slice. Music has taken a little bit of a step back just because of time. I still kind of get on my laptop whenever I can and just make beats, and I still make all the music for my YouTube videos. That's sort of one like non-negotiable for me, is like I don't want to use just like the royalty-free stuff for the background. That's like one thing I can always keep authentic in myself for YouTube, is just I can always make the music. But yeah, triathlon has just become, I've learned so much more about it and how much more professional I can be. And it's started to like take over my life in a way, but I would say I'm still very balanced. I have a great relationship that I would say pretty consciously put a lot of work into to make successful. I have a lot of really great friendships that, I wouldn't say take a lot of time because, I only have so much time and there's priorities. But I've got a really good community where I live in Seattle. So sort of in the free moments, I have a lot of really good friends to be around. But yeah, right now I am mostly a triathlete. I don't do much else in the current moment, for better or for worse.
Yeah. So what were you like as a kid?
A lot more music. I didn't find sports until high school. I thought when I was 10, 11, 12, like I was obsessed with Jimi Hendrix and that's who I wanted to be. That kind of I wanted to be a master of playing guitar. I always wanted to be a master of something, and messed around with a bunch of different stuff as a kid. There was tennis. Like early on, I went to this really cool camp as a kid where I got into glass blowing. When I got into blowing glass, I wanted to be. I was looking up all the best, glass blowers that there were, and I wanted to be the best glass blower in the world. Then I started playing guitar when I was 10 or 11, and I wanted to be the best guitarist in the world. And I spent all my time just practicing and playing guitar and just jamming out. And then, that was finally found running in high school, and then that completely took over. I'd say I was a pretty weird kid. I definitely wasn't cool. I had my friends. I feel like I got bullied a fair bit. I feel like when you're a little odd as a kid and you don't like immediately get what's cool,
Kids are ruthless.
You can get picked on. Kids are ruthless, and I wasn't big. Like, I was really skinny. I've always been pretty skinny, and yeah, I feel like I was just an easy target, and maybe that's like to a certain extent where that I need to be the best at something came from. It was like I need to justify why I'm worthwhile here, and why everyone who's picking on me is wrong. And I think maybe for some people it can go the opposite way, but I think for me it was really good for my self-esteem. Like, I think it's no issue now to see mean YouTube comments or get DMs that are like, "You suck, you'll never make it."
I can't believe people do that. It really blows my mind. I've yet to receive anything like that. Sorry.
Oh, you will.
Yeah.
No, you will. It's it only was like once I got to a suitable level of viewership. It's like early on, everyone who discovers you is kind of watching you feeling like they've discovered a gem. Maybe they're like, this guy, nobody watches his videos and I love them. And he's, so early, so raw. And everyone's a fan, and like no one really hate finds you or hate watches you. And then, especially once I started training with Lionel for the first time, a lot more people who wouldn't have come across you otherwise, and all of a sudden really want you to fail, start watching your videos. And then, that's kind of where the messages start coming.
Yeah.
But, God, I don't even remember what I was like as a kid. Cause I feel like I haven't changed. You know?
Yeah. You're still becoming who you are. Like, for the bullying stuff, I mean, that stuff's serious. I was bullied as a kid, probably not as much. I was more for me cause I was small and we traveled a ton. Like, I was never at one school, like more than usually a year, sometimes less.
You moved around. Wow.
Yeah. So we moved quite a bit. And so, like, there was always kind of the up and out just because kids didn't know you. And so, like, that was that for me. But for you, like, for a long time, I guess for me, I'll share first. For a long time, the shortness thing, all the jokes, whatnot, like, that really got to me. And it became like an unhealthy source of, like, I'm going to prove you wrong, going to do my own thing, source of independence. But over time, obviously, I think that changed. And I went to therapy and, like, so many other things. But for you, have you kind of worked through that? Does it still bother you? Like, when you kind of go back to that place, is it still like, ugh?
No, not at all. I was bullied. So I grew up in a Jewish household. I went to an Orthodox Jewish day school until high school. So my school was really, really small. And the kids who were bullying me are like now people I would call some of my best friends. I mean, one of them is, I would say, like, awesome. My lifelong best friend. And I think back on, third, fourth, and fifth grade, when I really have memories of it. That's sort of the earliest I remember, like, anything going on. It was like a social structure. There was like this one kid who, let's say, developed really early. He was like, got to be 6 feet tall in fifth or sixth grade, like, big kid. And obviously he has got physical dominance, and he was like the cool kid, good at basketball and like pretty athletic. I wasn't good at any. I won the gym class mile, but that was about it. I wasn't good at ball sports. I wasn't very agile or athletic. And so I was a very easy target in that regard. And so if you wanted to get in the good graces of this really big kid, kind of being on his team, picking on me, and this is not specific to me. I'm sure a lot of people have this experience. You just end up on the butt end of the social hierarchy, and all of a sudden, like, you're just the guy who gets picked on, and there's really no way out of it. Like, you're not going to beat up the kid who's 6 feet tall in fifth grade. I was like 5 feet tall, 100 pounds.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say like, oh, I understand it, and let it go. And there were points later on where, when we were a little bit older, we got into our teen years. I was like, said to all of them, I was like, okay, now we're all friends, but like, fuck you, man. Like that shit was not cool. And as I started to find things that I was really, really good at, like cross country, and started to feel, a much better sense of self-worth. And they're all, we're still friends, and they're all sort of seeing it. It's kind of, there is this kind of like, well, hey, look at me now. And so there's no bad blood or hard feelings, because I think in many ways, or every way, it turned me into the person I am. Similar to you, I did start going to therapy. My parents could see it. They could tell. I didn't come home and say, "Oh, I was bullied."
Yeah.
But they could tell something was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And they tried to have me go talk to a therapist. But in 5th grade, like, it's almost useless. Like, I didn't want to talk to this guy. I didn't trust this guy. I didn't understand what it meant to unpack things and talk about my feelings and why that was important. Mm-hmm. So that was the start. Eventually, like in high school, I went to therapy, and we had sports psych in college, like as part of the athletic department. So I basically was able to go to therapy for 7 or 8 years. And I see that as just learning different tools, for emotional regulation and dealing with anxiety. And there was a performance aspect of it, of, how do you basically keep your shit together when you're shitting yourself for, certain events, certain athletic events, or maybe there's an athletic event coming up and there's life things that are getting in the way. Like, how do you manage all that? So I think because of that, I have an enormous toolbox, like a mental toolbox. I just know how to regulate. I still definitely defeat myself mentally on the race course some of the time. I think sometimes I defeat myself physically in training before I even get to the race course. But to get back to the original prompt, no, I mean, I think getting bullied was probably, it's good. It's a canon event. It's part of the origin story, made both of us who we are.
Sure. Yeah, good synopsis, and thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So around the toolbox, do you have a few favorite tools, or do you kind of go to work through some of these things, like modern day, like ones that you keep close?
Well, it's so different now. Like, we live in a different world than even when I was in college, and the most current problems that I would say dealing with probably stem from some sort of like lack of attention span. It's so easy to just get swept up in your own mind. And I think that's partly why we all take to Instagram to just scroll, is because that's something that allows you to be mindless. Like, it's really hard to just sit there. So I have very recently gotten back into like a pretty consistent, not pretty consistent, every day mindfulness practice. I would say that's the number one thing, is just learn how to stay present. It's really, really hard. Like, if you just try to count your breaths to 50, like if you've never done it before, you won't get to 50. Like, and it sounds really simple. If you just breathe normally, you're gonna just completely
all of a sudden you're
get
outside
lost.
the door and you're like, oh wait, what was it?
Yeah, you're on this train of thought, and then you're like, shit, was that 21 or 22? Like, where am I? And then you kind of just go from where you think you were. But that's by far the biggest one, is just learn how to slow down and be in the moment, and like feel where your body physically is in space. It helps you understand that you don't have to take your mind seriously. It helps you notice like the thought patterns you might fall into. I think certain people might have intrusive thoughts or things that cause them to feel really anxious, and they give it, they think it's logical or rational, right? And like that worrying is a good and productive thing for them. And I say them, like it's other people. We all do it, and we all have to learn how to battle it. But and this is for racing and training as well. But the things that pop up into your mind, you basically have no control over. Like the initial thought, right? How you deal with that and how you respond to it, and the things that you might find to counter those thoughts is what's important. And that's the skill that you learn either through therapy or through sports psych, some sort of book you read. So those are the two biggest things. Learn how to just kind of not get lost in thought in the first place, and two, learning that you don't really have any control over your thoughts, and so you shouldn't just listen to them blindly. If I had to sum up 8 years of therapy into two practices.
Yeah. Super interesting. I think of this. So I grew up in a pretty religious setting, and there was this verse. I don't know where it's found. Someone's going to chew me out for it, but it's like, take every thought into captivity. I don't know if you've ever heard that one before, but it's this idea of essentially that, like, thoughts can come in from a million different directions for a million different reasons, but being able to, like you're saying, sit in a place of mindfulness, I think, to be able to take that thought to captivity and realize, okay, almost like boxing it away. Is this a good one or a bad one? Should I continue to pursue down this thought or train of thought, or completely like try to let it go? So yeah, it's super interesting.
Yeah. The most present example I have is Seattle's not the best place for triathlon training. But I found I love it there, and I'm fine training mostly alone. The pool, it's the most annoying thing about the pool is that, like, it's not fast. It's like the slowest pool I've ever freaking swam at. But it's a pool, it's water. I get the work in.
It's slow how?
Yeah. So it's really small. Here, science lesson, I guess. It's really small. So if you think about like a really big pool, and you drop a cannonball into it, there's a lot of room for the waves to ripple out. So it creates much less disruption by the time it hits the edge of the pool and then comes back and reflects. So just having a bigger pool versus a smaller pool creates a lot more time for the waves to calm down. So a much smaller wave hits the wall. That's why the wall lanes are generally slower, right? It just hits the wall immediately and comes back and interferes. And the water is quote unquote dirty. So it's small pool. It is really shallow. It's 3 feet all the way through. So that's the same thing. Like a deeper pool means less interference because there's more space for everything to ripple out. There's no gutters. Gutters are the same thing when it allows a much lower or no sort of reflection off the wall of the waves. So it just goes straight over into the gutters and there's no interference coming back from the wall. So those are the things. And lane lines also
make a huge difference.
Yeah. So the lane lines are like really loose. You can't tighten them for what they're like the wrong size. The pool is small. It's only 3 lanes. It's really shallow. And it's like you're always splitting a lane. And the water's really hot. So like there's these crazy, like, everything that could be slow about a pool, it is. So I give myself a conversion. Like when we go with me and my boys, Evan and Josh, who I believe you've both had on the podcast.
Yeah, great guys.
We've got our group chat, and Palm Desert Aquatic Center is like the comparison pool because we always go to Indian Wells, and that's like a really, really nice outdoor pool. It's got gutters. It's deep. It's a perfect temperature. Yeah. And I think it's salt water, or partial salt water, so you have that extra buoyancy. So I'm always like, yeah, I swam 110s today, but that's 106s at PDAC. Anyway, awesome. But yeah. So the pool's slow. The biking is great once you get out of the city, but I live in the city, so I have to bike out of the city for the good riding. And if I have a short ride, it's a little annoying. And the riding is honestly great. I love it there. So the probably least pro triathlon friendly part about it is the lack of other pros. So if I really was the type of person who needed to train with other pros, and it would help me if I did, I don't need it. I could train 30 hours a week completely alone, or I mostly do sometimes. It's very zen, and I enjoy it. So I don't mind that part that much, but I just keep thinking about, and again, this part's like maybe a little bit out of my control. I keep thinking about how much better would it be for me to be somewhere besides Seattle? How much better would my training be? How much fitter could I get? What would my race results be like? What kind of sponsors could I get if I lived somewhere else? And it almost like it felt like an infection, right? And it was making me feel these really negative emotions, like how often I was thinking about this. And then you just have to say, well, look, I'm here. I can't control these thoughts. I actually do enjoy being here. The worst part about thinking this is that it makes me feel negative when I think about it. So, I need to remember all these things that I've learned, and just be in the present moment, and also remember that this thought is just something I can't control. It's not something I have to give any credence. Yeah. Like, okay, well, I had this thought, so now I have to move. I have to uproot my life and move somewhere else, which I kind of used to do that. I like did that like every 6 months. I would move somewhere else, and sometimes it was fun, sometimes it was not fun. But I feel a lot more settled now, and so I don't really like the idea of uprooting my life again, right? And so they're not positive. They're thoughts that come with a lot of, or sort of generate a lot of negative emotion, and so it just helps to have been to therapy and have a mindfulness practice to make myself just not feel so negative all the time.
Yeah. How do you still go like regularly
to therapy?
Yeah.
No, I haven't been since college. I think that's being an adult. This is nothing triathlon related, but just being an adult, insurance, dealing with all that stuff.
Yeah, it's expensive.
It's expensive. Not all insurance cover it, and especially after the pandemic, it's kind of hard. Like so many therapists went like full, a lot of remote or fully remote, and it's just hard. It's hard to find someone who you vibe with, and that's a big part of therapy. Is not every therapist is going to work for every person. So I was blessed in college to have, they had multiple sports psych there, and we could
get in touch
basically make our own choice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting as I've gone off and on for many years, but I feel like half of the battle or half of the journey of going through therapy is finding the right person.
Yeah.
It's like dating on steroids in a lot of ways, because it's like they're not attractive, and that's not why I'm here. So there's nothing else to keep me
looking for the wrong thing in therapist, man.
Yeah.
I want the sexiest therapist.
That would not work out.
God.
Oh man. So going back to, I guess, moving around, uprooting a lot. When I first came across you, which was quite many years ago now, I think it was right before you decided you were going to go out to Tucson for a little bit, and that's when I think you started to really gain like some brand awareness, grow a bit, at least from the outside looking in. Like that's what it kind of seemed like. So my question is, what was that journey like as you were fully committing? Because I think I was following you right when you just decided to start getting into triathlon. So what was that journey like? Like you decide that, you start making that happen, and then you're kind of grappling to find community. You're moving around. You're going to Tucson. Like you're rising to a new level of like fame. Like what was all that like for you?
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Honestly, so as I mentioned at the very beginning, I was a software engineer right out of college. So I was working this job. It was fully remote, and I went to Boulder with my friend Spencer for the summer of 2020. We were just running. Then he signed a contract with the Brooks Beasts that summer. And this was an interesting summer because I had run really, really well that indoor track season. And I always wanted to be a pro runner. Like that was my dream. Never thought about triathlon. Never swam. I would bike casually. I guess like a sort of a normal athlete, but I was the furthest thing from my mind. And COVID hits, my final outdoor season gets canceled, so no shoe companies are really signing anyone. So my friend Spencer was one of the like original running YouTubers, and he was a sub 4 miler. He was very good. We were good friends, running together, and so he signs this contract with the Brooks. They say they'll give me shoes and gear, and I can show up to their practices. So I was like, okay, that's a pretty good situation. I can go anywhere. So we moved to Seattle. In Seattle for a little bit, and I was still chasing this dream before and after work of running pro, trying to, just get myself in shape to maybe hit the track later that year, 2021, try to make it to the Olympic trials, and see if I can get a shoe sponsor or whatever. Just keep getting faster, even if I have to keep the job. And then I got injured, pretty bad injury. Like I wouldn't have considered myself injury prone as a runner. But I was out for a while, and I bought a Wahoo kicker because I'm living in Seattle. It's getting into winter. It rains like every day for 7 months of the year. So nice software engineer salary. I bought myself a kicker, and I just start grinding on the bike. Of course, the kicker has like a built-in power meter, so I was able to see how good I was. I was getting on Zwift, doing Zwift workouts, a couple of Zwift races.
Super fun.
And that's when I started the YouTube channel. And, I wasn't, I would say I was pretty good for a beginner. You know, I pushed like 350 watts for 20 minutes, like in the first, sort of like the first time I did an FTP test. And you post a YouTube video where you're running, you know, I was running really well back then and pushing decent power. People start commenting like, hey man, you know, if you thought about triathlon, like you'd be pretty good if you learned how to swim. And so my mind at that point was still like, no, I'm just biking to cross train. But one thing led to another, and Talbot Cox sends me an Instagram DM saying like, or it was a video of like him and Lionel, like on Lionel's couch watching one of my YouTube videos. And I was like, oh, okay. And I had just discovered Lionel on YouTube, like a little bit earlier. And I was like, oh, that's fucking sick. And Talbot says, Lionel wants to train with you. Come to Tucson. And I was like, oh shit. Okay. And by that point, I'm like thinking about, oh, maybe I should try swimming, you know, like see if I'm any good at it. I love the bike training. I already love running. Let's just see where it goes. So, and this is probably where, you started watching the videos, but me and my friend Johnny, we go out to Tucson for 2 or 3 months, and I'm just training with Lionel, like mostly, you know, doing run workouts. But I started hitting the pool with him, swimming at Aqua Bear every morning, and just the team environment of like a swim squad was. I think if I had started swimming by myself, I probably maybe would not have been a triathlete right now. But just that environment at Aqua Bears, it's pretty so infectious. Fun, infectious, and I just had such a great time learning how to swim. And 2 weeks in, I think Lionel says, hey, there's this triathlon in Phoenix or outside of Phoenix. Like, I'll give you a bike and a wetsuit and arrow helmet. I'll give you everything you need if you sign up. And I was like, okay. So I signed up.
Good grief.
And gives me his like Kona, that black and green Canyon Speed Max. And that's the bike I did my first triathlon on with a full...
What a memory. That's amazing.
God, I know. It was crazy. It was terrifying because the race was just like up this huge climb and back down twice. Olympic distance. And the descent, it was like windy and crosswind. And he puts the 90 millimeter front wheel on there. I had never time trialed before. Like I didn't know. So I was like just riding the brake. And it's rim brake too. Yeah. So I was just riding the brakes the whole way down. And I would like... I like passed into the lead pretty early on in the bike and then would get passed on the descent because I just was so terrified.
That's a great story though.
Yeah. But I ended up winning the race and I was hooked. And that was that. And like from a social media perspective, like I had started with no intention of doing triathlon. Mm-hmm. It was just this pretty honest, like, hey, I'm injured right now. I'm riding the bike, getting back into running, trying to get in shape, and the running comes back, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know, people who are watching are probably pretty triathlon focused because it was like biking, running, YouTube videos. So the algorithm probably directed mostly triathletes to me. And then all of a sudden I'm in Tucson training with Lionel. So like for me, like thinking about what was happening in the moment, I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like I never thought my life would go this direction. Like I thought I was going to have a little, like a kind of a boring life for a while. You know, I'm working this software engineering job, just trying to like get the paychecks and run before and after work and do that slow grind until I maybe get a shoe contract and I don't need to work the job anymore. Mm-hmm. But like, I thought I was just going to be a runner. And then, you know, I started a YouTube channel. I start training with other people and people are start catching on and watching the videos. And it was just a crazy experience all around that I guess the entire year of 2021 culminating with, I still think about this, just the way, if you had to give like a graph of maybe the way my popularity has gone, like it was like I was saying before, like it was so positive early on. Mm-hmm. People were very like hype on my potential, and they're like, the videos are great, and he's got such a good attitude. And the PTO posted like best triathletes of 2021 and I got voted into the top 16 or round of 32. I forget how many they had, and I was matched up with Flora Duffy.
Oh,
and
my
I
word.
in the first round of voting. And of course, she had won the Olympics that year.
Yeah.
And it was not a popularity contest. It was like who was the best triathlete this year. And somehow I got on there.
Oh, crazy.
By far the worst to name. Like I wasn't even pro. So, or I guess I was by the end of the year, but I almost held her even. I think I ended up losing 54 to 46%.
Wow.
But that would never fucking happen now.
Yeah.
Just to but so like there was like maybe a lot of hype at the end of that year, and it was crazy to experience it like myself. Just it was a year that went a direction I could never have imagined.
Yeah. Do you find yourself wanting that to be replicated ever again, or are you settled and focused on where you're wanting to go now?
No, yeah, I mean it was great. It would be great if it could, because it was all positive. It wasn't, and I wasn't like, oh, I'm getting so many views on YouTube, I feel validated. It was just this feeling of, oh, the things that I always wanted to do are happening. Like I quit my job earlier that year, and I was able to just start training full time. And I was like, well, this is what I've always wanted. And the YouTube is taking off, which means I can probably start making a career out of this, even short of getting real sponsors. Like I can support myself by making YouTube videos. Like how crazy is that? And I can actually train like a pro athlete. Yeah. I would say it was very wholesome for me. Like I'm not motivated by getting 1 million subscribers on YouTube. I like sharing the journey. And I appreciate the community that it brings, but no, I've just always wanted to be, like I said, a professional runner, but now I've kind of decided I like triathlon training more.
Yeah.
I just like the amount of training, the grind of it, I love. And it was the beginning of everything that I had ever wanted. And I think in a way I can see it happening again on account of race results, right? Like at this point, that sort of thing wouldn't happen because of YouTube. Like it did basically because of YouTube before. And maybe early race results where people thought, okay, maybe Ari has some potential in a few years. But now it's like, okay, I have to deliver on the race course, and then maybe more people, like in the grand scheme of things, there's still not that many people who know who I am.
Sure.
If you just look at subscriber accounts and follower accounts, like I think there is a whole world of triathlon out there, and I'm trying, this like sounds like narcissistic and conceited. I'm just talking about like my follower accounts, but it's like I would, if that were to happen again, like I would like it to be on account of race results, like where big races that are reaching a huge audience. And again, it's not the validation of people knowing you. It's the validation of like, that's just a byproduct of me achieving the goals that I set out for myself. Like if I do, people are going to take notice because triathlon is a sport with a large audience. And if you start getting better and improving and delivering on progressively bigger and bigger stages, more people who didn't know you are going to say, well, I mean, who's this guy, getting whatever result at this big race. So I guess maybe it could happen again, but it would look very different.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't think it would feel the same as like, okay, a year ago, I was literally just like working a job trying to run. And now I'm basically making YouTube videos and training like a professional triathlete, just kind of like wake up and train. And that's what I do. It would, I don't even think it would feel different to me if that were sort of same sort of, I guess.
Because you've tasted it before.
Yeah, but it wasn't. It was like there was so much change. There was just a crazy amount of change happening. And now I don't think that I would feel there's that much change. I would feel like, okay, well, I've just been kind of grinding a little bit under the radar for 2 or 3 years. And, now it's finally time to deliver.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm curious, because it doesn't sound like you get your self-worth from race results or your follower counts or things like that. But where do you derive like that sense of self-worth?
I saw this really interesting quote a little while ago that kind of like I felt very seen. Dr. Gabor Mate. I don't know if you've come across him. He's like he's a childhood trauma expert.
He has an accent.
Yeah. Yes. It's like
He's older.
It's like somewhat Brooklyn, somewhat European. Yeah. Anyway, he basically said if I went back, and he's extremely successful, and he said if I went back, I wouldn't work so hard. I spent so much of my life trying to justify my existence, and I wish I had just spent more time enjoying myself. And I was like, whoa, that's me and so many other people who are, and going all the way back to the bullying thing. You know, as a fifth grader, you're like, well, I'm good at something, so I deserve to be here. And I think none of that, if you're not happy with where you are now, you're not going to be happy with where you are when you get a bunch of stuff.
Amen.
And, if I don't love the athlete I am now at the race results I'm getting now, I'm not going to love myself when if I win the T100, I'm the number one ranked triathlete in the world, that's. So in a way, it's like you have to let go of, if you think that I'm only going to be happy when I get a T100 contract, you have to let it go. It's like, I might never get that. I have to learn how to be happy with myself now and just enjoy my life day to day. You know what I mean? Because when it's all over, like, this is an incredible blessing. Like, waking up and training and just building the engine day after day after day. And it takes an incredible amount of devotion. I was telling my friends on a run this yesterday that, like, I think in many ways my goal is not to be a great triathlete. It's to find some form of enlightenment through devoting myself to triathlon. Like, like a monk who devotes themselves to silent meditation for 10, 20, 30 years in search of, conquering the human mind, I think is almost no different than seeking that conquering of the mind through devoting yourself to endurance training for years and years and years. And so it's a thing that takes incredible discipline, and it's a blessing to have the opportunity to chase it. So I don't think about whether I'm worth something or not a lot of the time. It's like an interesting question. I feel like maybe I used to. If I was feeling really fit, I felt like I was justifying my existence here. And if I was out of shape, I said, well, I'm not doing anything here. Like, I can't leave this earth until I, do X and Y. So I feel like I derive my self-worth from my friends, my family, my partner, things that like deep connections that actually add value to your life, and a very, very deep connection to and devotion to training. That's my answer.
Yeah, it's beautiful. That's a great answer. So then, as far as your future, what are your, I hesitate to say goals. I mean, I know that was my answer to the question. My friends were like, well, what do you want to do in the next 5 years? And I was like, I want to reach enlightenment. Yeah, reach enlightenment. Yeah, which I feel like finding contentment wherever you are, it should be the goal, because the buzz phrase that everyone says now is like, oh, you got to enjoy the process and enjoy the journey, which is totally true. But what does that really mean? I think it means every night going to bed with the peace and knowing that, if you were to die right now, like, are you happy with the decisions and the work that you put in the last 24 hours? If the answer is yes, and you can sleep well, then great. If not, then probably need some adjustment and figuring out. Yeah. But so are we? Is the question still what my goals are? No. Sorry, I was just making a comment. No, but I don't know. I mean, it's exactly what you said. It's just go to sleep at night. I mean, not even going to sleep at night content, but going to sleep at night excited to wake up in the morning and do the same thing all over again. Yeah. Get to the end of the day and you're like, fuck, that was a good day. Let's do it again. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's awesome, man. So I want to ask a couple other questions. One about just a crazy video I saw. So you recently went to the Giro d'Italia, and
Giro d'Italia.
Giro d'Italia, and you got to, I guess I won't even spoil it. You can talk about the video because I'm sure you have a much better idea of what happened from your own memory. So tell me about how that came to be, how you got there and got to do what you got to do.
So if you watch my YouTube channel, you certainly know that I'm sponsored by Ketone IQ. And Ketone IQ also sponsors Team Visma Lisa Bike. So in, I forget, maybe March or April, they called me up and they said, hey, we've got a couple of VIP tickets to the Giro d'Italia, stage 20. I looked up stage 20, and it was like they're climbing this huge 18K, 8% climb twice in a row. And I was like, holy fuck, yeah, I want to go to that. They're like, okay, so give us a pitch of like what you'll do if we were to send you. And you might think that my pitch was the thing that I ended up doing. Yeah. But it wasn't. It was so boring. I just said, I'll make a vlog about this and this and this, and included a bunch of stuff. And they were like, yeah, great, cool. All right, you got the tickets. Cool. So, they paid for my flights and paid for accommodations, and it's this whole like VIP program within the team. Visma Lisa Bike, they have a hospitality sort of division of their team. And Kiera, who's the director of partnerships at Ketone IQ, she texted me a couple days out from the trip and was like, hey, would you be down to wear the Ketone IQ costume and run behind the race? Just, so we can get some videos for socials. And I was like, fuck it. I'll wear it at the front of the race. Yeah. I was like, everyone's seen those guys, like the Devil, the famous guy, who runs next to the riders on the climbs. And, I've been watching the tour since I was a kid. My mom was really into cycling. So I just kind of grew up
around it,
watching the stages. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, behind the race. Like, that's boring as shit. I want to run next to Tadej Pogacar. So yeah, it wasn't like part of the deal. Like, people seem to think that I got sent to Italy to run in this costume. Like, I didn't have to. I just was like, oh, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
And she asked, like, would you like to do this? No sweat if you don't want to. And I was like, no, I definitely do. And I want to do it at the front of the race. Like, I want to get on the broadcast in this fucking costume. So yeah, it's a giant inflatable ketone, it's like shot of Ketone IQ. Yeah. If you haven't seen it, they're like these little bottle, like, like a 5-hour energy size bottle, of Ketone IQ. And it's like a human sized blow up of it. Very, very hard to run in. But I put it on and we waited for the race to come. And I got to run next to Tadej Pogacar for about 5 seconds. And we didn't make eye contact because I couldn't like see out of the side of the suit.
Hilarious.
But he turned it, and the video's on there. He turned and he looked at me, and then he looked to the other side. I think he was just trying to see what was going on. I don't even know if he because I'm sure for him he's like, he's not even thinking like, oh, there's a guy in a costume. Like, that's just, he's so used to it. Yeah. He was not dying.
You don't think he was dying?
Oh my God, he was destroying everyone. Yeah. He won the race by 10 minutes. Like, nobody was even close. I'm sure he had more. Like, if there was, like, if a Jonas Vingegaard
or somebody was there
type guy had been in that race to challenge him, I'm sure he had more in the tank. Wow. I think he was doing, he was feeling good. He had good legs. So, but for me, that was a highlight of the year, getting to go to one of those stages, which is like, they are crazy.
Yeah.
I would love to go to the tour one day, because all that I heard at the Giro was, the tour is 10 times bigger. So I was like, if that's 10 times bigger than this, like, that is insane.
Yeah, pretty wild.
That's how that thing came about. Yeah. Check out my Instagram, and check out my I forget what the name of the video is. It'll be pretty obvious.
I'll link your YouTube and the Instagram and everything for everybody.
I worked hard on that YouTube video too. I thought it didn't get great views, but I thought it was very artistic with it. So
nice, cool, man. Well, we're almost at an hour, so I have one more question for you that I'd love to ask. It's in the advice category, which I feel like you've given a lot of really sage, good wisdom advice for things you've learned. So
this is for people who want to learn more about therapy than triathlon. This is a good
exactly.
podcast.
That's what it's all about, man. So advice: if someone was trying to find direction in life, your life obviously has taken different directions than you thought it would. Where should they begin to look for advice and to seek wisdom to figure out where to go?
I'll say number one. This is a multi-part question. you should find out something that, not necessarily something that you like to do, but kind of like we were saying, like do something every day that you're working towards something, and you get to the end of the day excited to do it again. And for most people, that's going to be something probably outside of their 9 to 5. If you can find a 9 to 5 or whatever your job is, that, then you don't need advice. You've made it if you look forward to doing your job. But for most people, it's going to be something outside of their job that they enjoy doing every day. Or even if you don't necessarily enjoy doing it, that you enjoy the process of building yourself into something or building up something over time. 2, this was another interesting tidbit of that conversation I had while running with my friends yesterday. And it comes back to the whole mindfulness thing. I really don't believe in free will.
You don't?
And that's a whole, that's a whole other podcast for like a whole host of reasons. And, this is an argument that I don't know that there will ever be an answer for, sure. But I think this is similar to people who are super religious, who, it's God's plan, which is not a lack of free will, but it's the concept of there are so many things in this world that are outside of my control, and so I'm not going to worry about it. And I am of the opinion, and maybe I'm of this opinion because it's a very comforting thing to believe, that if you find something you like doing or that you're grinding on every single day, and you just don't worry about, am I doing the right thing or should I be doing something else? If you just continue to build on whatever that, maybe that's just going to the gym, getting healthy, or maybe it's writing or starting a podcast. Doesn't really matter what it is, but something, like one pretty specific thing that you are getting really, really good at and building something of. And you don't worry about what's going to come of it or whether you're making the right decisions or not. And you just continue to live your life. The right things will come your way. Have you read The Alchemist?
I have not.
It's, I think it's a pretty old book.
I've heard of it.
Paulo Coelho. It's a really short read. You and everyone. I think it's just a book that every human should read. And there's a lot of great quotes. I would say I'm a big quote guy. I just like, thinking about them. The book is basically about a kid who has a dream, and he spends the entire book like a literal dream. Like he goes to sleep and dreams about a tree and some treasure under the tree, and he spends the entire book searching for the tree, like going on this journey and doing all sorts of things. He's a shepherd, and he leaves his flock, and he goes on a big trip across the sea to Africa, I think. And the book is all about following your personal legend. And one of the quotes that I'm going to butcher is, well, I'll just paraphrase it. It's like, if you just stay on your grind and you put yourself out there, the universe will throw you a bone. I should look up the exact quote. You know what? I'm going to do that right now. Yeah. The Alchemist quote. I'm sure you can cut out the brief pause that this is going to cause.
When you want something, the whole universe conspires. That one.
Yes, the universe conspires. That's it.
When you want something, the whole universe conspires in order for you to achieve it. There you go. Is that the full quote?
I think there was.
It's all right. We will find it here. I'll even make a note.
Maybe that is what it is. Yeah. I thought there's some like context beforehand, but
when you want something,
the universe conspires to help you achieve it. But the context there was along the lines of you have to work really fucking hard.
Yeah.
Because the universe is going to test you. You're not just going to get it. The universe is going to test you and essentially try to make you quit and see how bad you want it. And if you
perseverance,
then it was the same. I have read this book multiple times, and I felt that in that year 2021, so many times I felt like so many things just went my way after I was taking all these risks, like quitting my job and basically just moving from place to place. Quitting my job was a huge risk. I had no idea what I was going to do for money. I wasn't making enough from YouTube ad revenue, so I didn't really have a plan. And then going to Tucson to train with Lionel, that was so on a whim. Me and Johnny found this month-to-month apartment that we could lease, and I was draining my savings account from software engineering. And it was just I don't know what's going to happen, but I want to do this, so I'm going to do it. And if it all crashes and burns, I guess, I'm not going to be homeless. I'll just move back and stay with my parents. And that's, and I'll restart from there. And I felt it so many times where I was just going off on a limb, doing these seemingly crazy things, and the universe was conspiring to help me achieve this dream. And maybe that's just a common concept that ends up happening. When you really go after something you want, it's not really that the universe conspires to help you achieve it. It's just that you don't stop until you actually get there. And so it seems like there's all these breaks that go your way, but I guess winners create their own breaks.
Yeah, for sure. Well, how does that go against the concept of free will?
That's more of a comfort thing. To stop, you don't need to question whether you're making the right decision, because you're making the decision that you were always going to make. And so the arguments against free will come, and I guess for free will come in many, many different forms. Unless we want to go another hour.
I'm going to have to hit you back up for that one, because I do want to, I'm curious to hear further.
Yeah, but I just, when I've thought about it enough, where would free will have come from initially, and outside of a religious context, it just doesn't really make much sense.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So that's that. But it's the same thing as I was saying, God's plan. Yeah. Even though that's not my belief system that helps me sleep at night, but it's the same thing. It's the universe is a great power that has more control over my life than I do. And so worrying about things is not of any use to me. Yeah. I just need to stay on my grind, and good things will happen. Yeah. And I think there's no better way to live than to believe that, whether or not it's not true, whether it is true or not.
Yeah. Fascinating, Ari. Well, thank you so much for sharing so deeply, I guess, for so many different experiences and times in your life and things you've learned. It's been enriching to me. I always love doing this stuff because I learn something new from everybody every day, and I feel like I've learned several new things from you just from living vicariously through your storytelling. So really appreciate you coming on and taking the time, and all the best in Connecticut, and then your race coming up here pretty soon.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you. Thanks for the chat. That was 72 minutes, completely flew by.
Yeah. It's super fun. I love doing this. So I definitely want to do it again. I'll hit you up, and we'll have to dive deep into the free will.
Awesome.
I'd love to go on that.
Yeah, let's plan it for next week, and then I think we'll get to it by December.
Okay. Sounds good, man. Thank you so much to Ari again for coming on the show and for sharing so much about his life and the journey. Lots of wisdom in there, lots of things that he's learned that I think we all could glean some experience for ourselves. So again, thank you so much to Ari for coming on and sharing that. And want to kind of leave you with some of the advice that he was talking about with that quote from The Alchemist. When you want something, the whole universe conspires in order for you to achieve it. So basically, work hard. Working hard is good. Working hard gives endurance. Working hard gives so many benefits that I cannot even begin to describe. So again, thank you so much for listening to this podcast, and go out there and get it done. If you made it to this point in the podcast, just want to say thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here. Wherever you're watching or listening, if you wouldn't mind dropping a comment, leaving a review, sharing, doing any of those things, it really does help us to continue to grow. And if you want to sign up for our newsletter, you can do so at the stupidquestions.show website. Thank you so much for joining in again, and we will catch you in the next episode. See you later.